Welcome, Joseph, to another episode of Oddballs. Today we are going to be talking about the sport of lacrosse. What do you know about that?
So I think I have heard of it a few times on sort of American TV shows. I think it featured in Teen Wolf.
Exactly your type of TV show.
Well, my sister watched that when she was a teenager, and I was vaguely aware of that.
Okay.
It was also definitely on an episode of House, I remember that. That I was really into as a teenager. Although I don't think it really... I think the kid was just playing lacrosse and then got some sort of illness, obviously. And then the House fixed him eventually. I don't think that the illness had anything to do with lacrosse, though. But yeah, my perception of it is very much American sport. And I think pretty predominantly like a teenager and college student sport. I don't really think of it as a professional sport, but I am willing to be educated.
Sure, I think those perceptions are pretty bang on. It's probably fairly similar to what I knew myself before having looked into it. It is an American sport, an American continental sport. So the origins of the sport go back to Native American tribes in about the 12th century, where they used to organize these massive events, gatherings, where they would play this game as a form of celebration or a ceremony for like a spiritual ceremony, ritual type thing for good omens of some sort, or just a way of keeping their tribesmen fit.
Social ties as well.
Social ties, of course, yeah. It would often be played between tribes, okay. or they would organize internal games within your tribe. So it was always a way of connecting with the nearby tribes and maybe agreeing not to attack each other for a while, which is a good thing, I would say.
Yeah.
Basically, how the origin of the game, it in its simplest, oldest form, was these 100 to 1,000 people at a time.
Oh, geez.
Turning out on an enormous field, sometimes up to 2 miles long, and they would have a stick that's been made. It's kind of got a shaft and then a 2-pronged fork at the end of it, made out of the hickory wood, which is also what original golf clubs were made out of.
Oh, yes.
And then they would have a kind of a netting on the end of that stick, which was made out of deer sinew. And then what they would do is they would chase a rubber ball, or in those days it would have probably been a wooden block wrapped in leather. Okay. And they would have thrown that around, chased it around the field for sometimes days at a time, is how long these celebrations or these events might go on. And the objective was to score as many points as possible. And to score a point, what you would do is you would throw the ball into the opposition's goal. And back then, your goal might have been a gigantic rock or a tree that you needed to aim at. That's what you would be... that's how you would score your points. So that is the origin of the game.
Okay, fascinating. That sounds quite a lot like those original football games that were sort of played between two villages, where they just sort of kick lumps out of each other and try to get a ball from village A to village B before the sun went down, basically.
Yeah. I think in days gone by, this kind of like cross-country sport was quite a big thing, because I know they also used to play golf from, say, town to town, and people would often be in a clubhouse and wager another guy, okay, I bet you I can get to this town in fewer shots than you, and they would literally go out for a day and a half at a time, non-stop hitting a golf ball. Every time it went in a natural water hazard, they would have to take a penalty drop, and then they would get to another town with 600 or 700 shots later, something like that. So I think back in the day, they did really enjoy a cross-country sport.
Yeah, well, before I think you get purpose-built sporting facilities that, I mean, all you can really do is make a game that works with the landscape you have.
Yeah. The Native Americans played this game. It was stumbled upon by European settlers when they moved over to the States and to Canada. And it was taken on pretty well by the Europeans. They got themselves involved. They often played it. And there's a pretty strong history of collaboration between the Native Americans and the European settlers and this game. Okay. So it was in about the 17th century, some French Jesuit missionaries went over to North America, and they saw this game, and they thought that the sticks that the players were holding looked very similar to the staff or the crozier that a bishop would hold in the Catholic Church, and that's where the name lacrosse came from. The crozier means cross, I think, but phonetically, Le Crozier transformed into lacrosse.
Lacrosse. Okay, that's fantastic. Because I was thinking it seems quite a sort of Frenchy name for a Native American sport.
It is,
but so the name is French.
Yes, and of course, the tribes that were playing this game were kind of in the northern part of the states, around kind of the Great Lakes, Michigan,
Montreal,
and on the eastern side, and the eastern side of Canada is the French-speaking part of Canada.
Well, I think that was the entirety of the European Canada and European America at that time.
Yes,
pretty much.
Yeah, so there is a French influence to it. The Europeans had seen them Native Americans play this game. They want to get involved themselves. It was taken back to Europe by a few people. It was played a lot in the UK. The Queen of England in the 1900s, it would have been Queen.
Would have been Victoria.
Victoria.
So it would have been late 1800s.
She described the game as as the most beautiful game she had seen in her life before. So that kind of raised its profile in the UK. So it's been played in the UK. It's been played in France. Australia are strangely good at it.
Okay.
But the game evolved from this rough and tumble, very unregulated sport that was being played by Native Americans, all the way to a very well organized, very well codified game that we have in this day and age.
Okay.
And that is in large thanks to a man whose name you will love. His name was William George Beers.
Oh, sport and beers going hand in hand, as always.
Honestly, it's perfect. He founded the Montreal Lacrosse Club in 1856. And then over the course of the next 15 or so years, spent time creating the rules of the game, codifying it in its entirety. And the first game played under those rules was in about the 1870s at some point. And those, for the large part, have been the rules that persist to this day.
Okay, so there's a very similar time to the codification of football and rugby and a lot of other big sports. Cricket was a little bit earlier, but a lot of the big sports around the world today were codified in the sort of mid-1800s.
Sure. Interestingly enough, this was a predominantly male game. Sorry, it was an entirely male game.
Okay.
In the mid-1800s, towards the end of the 1800s, until some lady from Scotland had visited North America. She had seen this game being played. She absolutely loved it. She took it back to Scotland, told her friends about it, and they organized a game of lacrosse in Scotland, which turned out to be the first ever game of lacrosse played by women. And that was in 1890.
Okay, are you familiar with shinty?
Yes,
it's a little bit like hurling, a little bit between hurling and hockey. So I'm just thinking that
Bob McIntyre, the golfer, plays it.
He does, yeah. So it's obviously not very similar. You don't have the net, but I was just wondering if the similarity between shinty's popularity in Scotland and also a stick game, sort of maybe played into the ease of adaptation in Scotland.
I imagine that might have played a role. So what we have now is a codified game, and it begins to explode. It's been a very fast-growing sport in the States and in Canada. It is the official summer sport of Canada.
Okay.
And we have in large part Mr. Beers to thank for that. Now, I think it's a good idea to run through the gameplay element of it.
Okay.
How do you score your goals and whatnot?
Yeah.
On what field are we playing at this point in time? So, as I mentioned earlier, the objective of the game is to score a goal.
Yeah.
The wooden block wrapped in leather has been replaced by a rubber ball these days, and people now use sticks that are made not out of wood but out of carbon or out of aluminium metal sticks. So that's advanced a little bit, and what you need to do is use your stick to scoop up the ball. You can pass it by flicking it to other teammates. They will catch it in the net of their stick, and then they can run with it, pass it again, and you need to try to score a goal. The goals are on either ends of the field, but there is some space behind the goals.
Okay.
It's kind of like ice hockey, but even more space behind there.
Okay, a little bit like rugby as well, where there's the dead ball area, but there's less play in those areas, I guess, than in hockey.
The area behind the goal in lacrosse is called the X.
Okay.
And it is a pretty dangerous play to be because the keeper can't see what you're doing.
Okay.
And the keepers are often burdened with a lot of equipment, so they're not very nimble, so they can't really turn around to watch what you're doing.
Okay.
So you can unsettle them a little bit by doing that. So you have your goals on either end with a bit of space behind them, and then you have the pitch is divided up into thirds.
Okay.
So let's just say there's a 1/3 line and a 2/3 line.
Yeah.
The reason for having those lines is that in any of the iterations of the game, for men or for women, they have varying numbers of players on the field at any given time, but each player will be either a defender, a midfielder, which they call middies, or an attacker.
Okay.
Defenders are not allowed to advance past the first third, so you always have to be in your defensive third of the pitch.
Okay.
Middies can roam across the entire field,
Okay.
and attackers cannot retreat back into the first 2/3. So they always have to remain in the attacking third.
So attackers and defenders have their thirds, midfielders can roam the whole pitch.
Exactly right.
Okay. So that's quite a foreign concept to a lot of sports where like everyone can play everywhere basically. Football, rugby, the sort of big ones that we think of. But I think the netball to me stands out as a sport where your sort of movement is restricted by position. And then recently in the last year they've changed the rules of Gaelic football. They made a whole lot of changes, but they've really worked quite well. One of them is to restrict, it's not position by position, but you must have 3 defensive players in your own half. Or you must have 3 players in your own half. They don't have to be defenders. There probably will be defenders because your attackers are going to be further forward. And occasionally the goalkeeper will go up and then 3 defenders will stay back. Sometimes it'll be a defender and the goalkeeper and 2 defenders.
I see.
But that is, yeah.
Yeah,
but
there are not many sports that have the restriction on movement like that. The only other restriction in lacrosse about areas of the pitch you can't enter into is that there is a circle that surrounds each of the goals.
Okay.
And that's called the crease. It's basically the goalkeeper's area.
Okay.
If you try to score having gone into that, it's a crease violation. The point won't count.
So a bit like the zone in handball.
Yes.
Okay.
I would say exactly like that.
How big is that?
I don't know the dimensions offhand, but probably a 8 foot in diameter. So 8 foot in all the way
height.
across.
Okay.
Is that diameter or? Diameter is half of the circle.
Radius. No, diameter is a full circle.
Okay.
A full circle.
Yeah, about 8 foot.
Okay, so that's not big at all.
No, it's fairly small.
Okay.
I mean, it's pretty much point blank that these guys can score from.
Yeah.
The keepers don't have much of a chance, but the goals aren't too massive. Okay. Depending on the version of the sport you're playing, the goals might be, the biggest they are, I think, is about 6 foot by 6 foot.
Okay.
And then in other versions, it might be about 4 foot by 4 foot.
Okay. And then you mentioned some changes according to whether it's men's or women's size. Is that sort of maybe do the women play on a slightly smaller pitch or?
So strangely, against what perhaps your expectation might be, women actually play on a larger pitch.
Okay.
So in the men's game, you have 10 players on a team.
Yeah.
The women's game, you have 12 players on a team.
Okay.
The men's pitch is about 110 yards by 60 yards wide. And then the women's pitch is about 120 to 140 yards long and 70 yards wide.
Okay.
So that's one of the number of players and the dimensions of the pitch are 2 of the key distinctions between the men's and the women's games. The other distinctions are that the men's game is incredibly physical. You can body check the hell out of someone, kind of shoulder on shoulder contact. Any shoulder on body contact is totally fine. You can use your stick to hit someone else's stick as hard as you want in order to try to dislodge the ball. And you can even use your stick to kind of bump off a player if you wanted to, but your hands would have to be together on the stick as opposed to separated on the stick. Otherwise, it's called, I'm not sure what it's called. It might have been a stick violation of some sort. But those are, so the men's game, because it's a lot more physical, they have a lot of safety equipment they need to wear. They wear proper big helmets, shoulder pads, chest pads, arm guards, all the shebang, as opposed to the women's game, which is not physical. There's no body checking allowed. You're allowed to hit someone else's stick to dislodge the ball. But they would just wear kind of safety goggles and a gum guard.
Okay.
Would be the extent of the outfield players' equipment. The goalkeepers are dressed
more protected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think of a field hockey goalkeeper,
Yeah.
very similar look to that, except they don't have the big pads on their legs.
Okay.
And on their feet. One other important part of the equipment, which applies to both the men's and the women's game, is called long poles. So your normal lacrosse stick would, I don't actually know how long it is, but let's say it's 5 foot.
Yep.
You get these things called long poles, which are much longer poles, sticks. They are a lot more sturdy as well, and those are given, you're only allowed to have 4 of them on the field at any given point in time. So your 3 defenders would usually be using long poles. It gives them an advantage in terms of like intercepting a ball.
Okay, and range, I'd imagine, of throw.
That's true. But I think it's largely from the defensive perspective.
Okay.
It's also, if the defender picks the ball up in one of those things, because it's bigger and more sturdy, is less likely to be knocked out of there.
Okay.
So it's harder to affect the turnover in your attacking part of the
So
field.
what did you say? There are 4 long poles on the field, or
Yes, a maximum of 4 long poles on the field. So your 3 defenders would almost definitely be using them, and then you might have 1 defensive midfielder.
Okay.
Who would also have a long pole.
Okay. Very, very American name, a long pole. They like to name the things quite as they are. Racquetball.
It's true. It's effective.
Yeah. Sidewalk.
We're not going to be left guessing what a long pole is.
No.
It is a long pole. An interesting rule in the gameplay side of lacrosse is, I mean, you'll of course be familiar in most sports, if the ball goes out of play,
Yeah.
it affects the turnover of possession.
Yes.
That is true in lacrosse. If a team has accidentally passed it out or spilt the ball, it's been knocked out of their stick and it's gone out of play, it would be a turnover in possession. However, if the attacking team takes a shot at goal and misses and the ball goes out past the goal, the team that gets to begin the next play is the team who had a player closest to the point where the ball exited. So you get this strange scenario where if somebody misses a shot, you might see 2 players full on sprinting after this ball, knowing full well it's going to go out, but just to be closest, and they might even dive, just to be closest to the ball as it crosses the line so that they get to keep it or get possession of the ball for the next play.
Oh, that is very unusual. I can't think of any other sport that has a rule similar to that.
No, I must say it was the first time I'd kind of stumbled upon it as well. I mentioned that the players need to kind of pick the ball up with their net and throw it around. Outfield players are not allowed to use their hands at all. Goalkeepers can. So if a ball's kind of spilling around in the crease, the goalkeeper can pick it up, and if they wanted to. But otherwise, no handling of the ball is allowed whatsoever. The rules we've just discussed with the kind of the third lines, the long poles, all that kind of stuff, that falls into, let's say, the most traditional version of sport, which is called field lacrosse.
Okay.
Now there is a different version of lacrosse called box lacrosse, which is comparably popular, but it is a more high-paced, smaller environment game. They usually play it on artificial turf, which has been put into an ice rink, which is usually like an NHL stadium type thing. And there are only 6 players on a team. So you would have 5 outfield players and 1 goalkeeper, and then there's no restrictions on which players can go where depending on their positions, and there are no long poles because it's a much smaller arena.
Okay, so it almost sounds like a version of ice hockey crossed with lacrosse.
Yes.
I think ice hockey is also, is it 5 outfield players and 1 goalkeeper? It's either that or 4 outfield players and 1 goalkeeper, but I think it's 5 and 1.
I couldn't tell you. But yeah, I mean, it looks a lot like it, except they're not ice skating.
Yes.
And
it's a pretty significant part of ice hockey. It
is, and they're not playing on ice either. And they are, and obviously the ball is typically airborne,
yes,
as opposed to the puck in ice hockey, which is obviously on the ground most of the time.
Okay, so nothing like ice hockey.
No. Well, they played in an ice hockey rink, so in that regard it is. So that's box lacrosse.
Yeah.
Pretty popular as well. And then world lacrosse, which is the governing body across the world for the sport, has dreamed up a version of the game called Sixes, which is kind of a blend of field lacrosse and box lacrosse. And it makes, the reason they've done it is to just make it a little bit more inclusive, taken down the number of players needed. So they've combined some of the better elements of both of the sports to make it kind of more easier to get into,
Accessible.
and would make for better kind of on TV viewing.
Yeah, and I suppose you don't have to have, like, if you're a relatively small school or relatively small club or whatever, you don't have to have 12 plus subs. You can just have 6 plus subs, and it's a lot easier to put a team together.
Yeah.
So is it similar a little bit to like Sevens rugby? Is it shorter time or is it similar time?
Exactly, yeah. So they have condensed the time. So a normal field lacrosse game would probably be in the region of about an hour of total gameplay.
Okay.
And sixes, you would have 4 8-minute quarters.
Okay.
So it lands up just over 30 minutes odd.
Yeah.
So it is very much a condensed version of it, but the difference is you're playing 6 players on side, but this is still on a field outside.
Oh, geez. Okay.
So it is a smaller field than the
field
field lacrosse, but it's bigger than the ice rink.
Okay, so it's not quite as intense as like Sevens rugby where you're playing on a full size
Oh
rugby
no,
pitch,
not
and
at
that
all.
is
Not at
exhausting.
all. No. So this is the version of the sport that World Lacrosse is really trying to kind of advocate for.
Yeah.
Although they do also oversee, of course, field lacrosse and box lacrosse too. The people who play this sport, it has been pretty recently dominated. Not dominated. It's incredibly popular in the northeastern region of the States.
Okay, sort of New England.
Yeah, New England territory, and in Canada.
Okay.
It is the national sport. Did I mention?
National summer sport of Canada.
National summer sport of Canada. So it's very popular up there as well. And as you kind of rise through the ranks and you realize you're very good at lacrosse, you might be thinking, okay, what do I do with this now? So a lot of colleges in the States have very good lacrosse programs, which is overseen by the NCAA.
Yep.
And that is a massive kind of sporting arena. They played at a very high level. The athletes who are participating in are almost like semi-professional or professional levels of like physical well-being and being looked after, that kind of stuff. They're just trying to get a degree at the same time, of course.
So I know NCAA is huge in terms of like the big American sports, basketball.
Yeah, they oversee all of that.
Football. Baseball, I'm not aware of it to such a big extent, but I imagine it's as big. The only thing I would think that is maybe lacrosse is less competitive because there isn't a huge professional scene. So if you are an elite athlete, you're probably looking more into basketball, football, baseball than lacrosse at the university level.
I would say that there is a professional scene, which we'll talk about in a bit, but certainly not the size of these other leagues, these other sports that you've mentioned.
Okay.
It is a little bit more niche than that. However, I think that it might also be a case of you grow up playing lacrosse. By the time you've realized you're really good at it, you've probably missed the developmental curve to start another sport. Well, and you're very good at it,
Yeah.
And I don't think this game has too many crossovers, kind of skill-wise, with other sports, especially not the other ones in the States.
Yeah. Well, I do remember now one of the pop culture references to lacrosse that I am very familiar with is from the TV show Archer, which is an animated comedy show, and he's a spy. And he, in the one episode, gets kidnapped by pirates and eventually becomes king of the pirates. And his first order of business is to set up a professional lacrosse league in the Pirate Islands.
We'll need to find out where that is and see if the lacrosse league is still going. So college lacrosse is referred to as the beating heart of lacrosse. It is played at a very high level. It is super well supported. By the time we get to kind of playoffs in the at the end of the regular season for lacrosse, the crowds that are coming out to watch the thing is extraordinary.
Okay.
50,000 people plus.
These are also the sort of New England areas where all the Ivy League schools are. So imagine
it's a huge Ivy League. It's a huge Ivy League game, and it is generally one of the criticisms of the game. It is regarded as quite a posh elitist sport. Yeah. So it's played by kind of the posh elitists, and it's also played by still indigenous people that would have their own teams and appreciate more the history of the sport. There are about 75 Division 1 men's collegiate programs endorsed by NCAA and about 120 women's Division 1s programs that are endorsed, and they participate, each program would participate in a conference similar to how we think of football. And
I'm familiar with the conferences in the NCAA, American football.
So they all get split up, and then anyway, it gets whittled down, and you have playoff series, and then a winner will be crowned, a kind of a unified winner from all of the different conferences. The kind of most successful programs in the history at an NCAA level is, on the men's side, is Syracuse, and on the women's side is the University of Maryland. Both of which are kind of on that northeastern side of the states.
I don't think Maryland is part of New England, but it's very close to.
Yeah. It's quite funny if you look at a map of all of the Division I endorsed programs by the NCAA. It's just this giant map of the states, and all the dots showing the location of them on the northeast. There's like one or two very strange little outliers on the sides.
California, maybe the wannabe elitists.
Yeah, exactly that. So that's the college game played at a super high level. They would play field lacrosse, and they would play box lacrosse. And I would think that perhaps sixes is something that's going to become more integrated. I mean, they would have been playing this at a collegiate level, let's say, as early as 1960s, 70s or so. So there's a lot more history to it. But the incorporation of sixes might now... It will certainly help in other colleges that maybe don't have great lacrosse programs.
I imagine it could also be a high school game, introducing it, getting into the sort of higher profile. In the same way that sevens, the World Rugby was trying to utilize sevens in smaller countries that don't have the facilities as much to play 15s. There was a little bit of disagreement between a lot of people whether sevens was good for the growth of 15s or not. But World Rugby tried to embrace the growth of sevens to promote 15s rugby, basically. And that was the premium product, and potentially lacrosse is similar.
Yeah. Once you have done your college experience, and if you still reckon you're really good at the sport, you might choose to become a professional lacrosse player. On the men's side, there is a lot more opportunity to go and do that than on the women's side. There are two pretty well-established men's lacrosse professional leagues in North America. The first one is called the National Lacrosse League, and that's been going since about the 1980s odd. So it got a good bit of history to it there as
Is
well.
that American National Lacrosse League or Canadian?
Similar to ice hockey, it's cross-border. It's cross-border. So they importantly play box lacrosse. So in the ice rinks with artificial turf, right? So there are 14 teams that participate in that. The competition runs from December of each year until June, and something I was quite shocked to hear, it ranks as the third most popular indoor sport in the world.
That is shocking to me.
Based on average attendance at games. So I think since about 2002 to date, the average attendance at these NLL games has been between 8,900 and about 10,200 spectators.
Do you know what the top two would be? Basketball, I imagine, is number one.
And ice hockey.
Yeah. So Kabaddi is lost out.
Yeah, I would say so.
That's very disappointing.
As I mentioned, there's 14 teams that participate in this. Strangely, 8 of them are American. And 6
are
Canadian, let's say that. The strange thing is that 83% of the players are Canadian.
Well, that's similar to the National Hockey League. Most of the players are Canadian, but I think most of the teams are American.
So 83% of the players are Canadian, which is an enormous majority. And then 10% of them are, forgive my pronunciation, are Haudenosaunee, which is basically a confederacy of Native American tribes that existed.
Is that not related to the Native Americans in the TV show Parks and Rec? Pawnee and Shawnee, is that not a... I thought that was a connection.
Could well be. I mean, the most famous tribes that are part of this would be the Mohawk tribe, which everybody knows about, I presume. Anyway, so the Canadian players and the Haudenosaunee make up 93% of players that are playing in these teams. Only 7% are actually American, which surprises me a lot because they've got such a strong collegiate level game. But I'm not sure if the strength in college level is also actually Canadians who are just studying in the States, but I don't imagine it would be to that extent. This league has been running since 1986, and the most successful team that plays in it is called the Buffalo Bandits. They've won the competition 7 times, and they've been in runners-up 7 times. Okay. So they've been finalists 14 times in 40 years.
Okay.
Odd. And one thing we always mention on this, it is a professional league. How are these guys earning? For a season's worth of play in the NLL, you would typically expect a player to get paid between $10,000 and $35,000.
Okay, so that's putting it in the sort of semi-professional ranks, probably.
Yeah, a lot of the players would have a full-time job.
Okay, and that's only 6 months of the year.
And 6 months of the year.
Yeah.
December till June.
Till June, yeah.
Yeah. Now, that's the National Lacrosse League where they play box lacrosse.
Yes.
There's a second professional league called the Premier Lacrosse League.
Okay, for field lacrosse.
Where they play field lacrosse. This was only founded in 2019. There have been other iterations that haven't really worked, but this was founded in 2019. They play a 14-week season, and it's 8 teams that participate. And strangely, each of these teams doesn't have a home base, but they actually travel from location to location to location, and the tournament, much like Sevens rugby, you would have the Hong Kong Sevens. That's where they at one major city. Cool. That's where the competition is for that week. The next week it will be in a different city. So it's almost like a traveling circus.
Traveling circus. Okay, well it's quite interesting. There's discussion now. I'm not sure how much you've heard of rugby starting a competition like this. It's almost a breakaway competition. I think it's headed by Mike Tyndall, who's a former English international. But yeah, apparently have signed up a whole bunch of players. We'll see where that goes in the next year or so.
Yeah.
But apparently they are trying to set up that sort of a style for 15s rugby, not 7s rugby.
Okay. And where would they be doing that? Is that in the States or?
Again, it will be all over the world, I think.
Okay.
I think there'll probably be more than one tournament in the States, to be honest.
Very interesting.
But there'll be one in the UK. There'll probably be one in South Africa, one in Argentina, maybe.
Oh.
I think there'll be about 8 throughout the year.
Okay, so yeah, I mean it's interesting to see that these touring leagues seems to be taking off a little bit more these days. The names of the teams are like, it's just so American. The Whip Snakes.
That is very American.
There's a team whose name is just Chaos. And the Water Dogs. When I see this, when I saw these names, it just was bringing like flashbacks of when they announced the Live Golf League.
Yeah.
And they were just coming up with all these bizarre names, like
Strikers.
the High Flyers and the Crushers, and it just seems so American, but that is what it is. They play field lacrosse, but they played a modified version of it. It's a slightly smaller field. Okay. They have a shot clock. So when you get possession of the ball, you have to take a shot within a certain amount of time. If you take a shot and recover it, then you get a bit more time to try to get a second shot off. And interestingly, they have a 2-point arc around the goal. It's about 15 yards away from the goal, from which if you score from outside of that arc, you get 2 points as opposed to 1 point.
Okay, so I mentioned the new Gaelic football rules earlier. That is also one of the new rules. I think it's a 45-meter arc, though, so a bit bigger than...
A bit bigger,
yeah.
So those kind of changes that they made is just to make it a bit more kind of audience-friendly, whether it's in person or on TV.
Okay. A lot of these sports that we've spoken about, Kabaddi had changes for viewership reasons, and a lot of these sports, when they're trying to professionalize and especially go from either traditional sports or collegiate sports into mass viewership sports, are having to sort of tweak the rules a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
In order to make it more TV friendly and audience friendly, obviously.
Sure. This Premier Lacrosse League can turn out to be quite lucrative for players.
Okay.
As I mentioned, it's a 14-week season.
Yep.
I'm not sure if they play every week consecutively, so it might be a bit longer. Let's call it conservatively 4 months, maybe 5 months long, and they'd be earning about between $25,000 to $50,000 for that.
Okay.
So if you're a player who is skilled enough to transition between the box version of the game and the field version of the game, you could potentially sustain yourself fairly well with that. But from what I read, most people still do have jobs outside of lacrosse.
What time of year is this is
So
this played?
field lacrosse, the Premier Lacrosse League would be played from June onwards.
Okay, so
for
you
14
could
weeks.
theoretically play both.
They intentionally did it
Okay.
so that the Premier League lacrosse doesn't overlap with the collegiate playoffs,
Okay.
and it doesn't clash with the National Lacrosse League.
Okay.
That's I think to boost viewership, because otherwise you can dilute your viewership.
Yeah, but I
and
imagine
to increase the quality of the participants.
Okay, I imagine the NCAA players can't play in this thing unless they've finished university. Because
Yeah, I think the reason they try and miss it is more just from a viewership perspective.
Oh, that's true.
So those are the two men's professional leagues.
leagues.
There is a women's lacrosse league, the WLL, which they play the sixes format in,
Okay.
which is a fairly new version of
Yeah.
the game. And this league has actually only been established in 2025. The inaugural competition ended in February of this year. There had been attempts to put together professional women's leagues in the past, and they got them going, but they never really seemed to like bed in and take up a lot of support. But they are more hopeful that this one will, because the sixes is an adapted version of the game, which is a lot easier to watch, easier to understand, pretty enjoyable. So this inaugural league that was set up only consisted of 4 teams. It was contested in February, and it's owned by the Premier Lacrosse League.
Okay.
So they do kind of the organization of it. So the two are pretty integrated. The Premier Lacrosse League, although they play field lacrosse, they do also organize, as in like a season break, a sixes tournament.
Okay.
And that was made to coincide with the women's one.
Okay.
So the two kind of are interlinked at the same time. I
A
guess
little bit of
get
cross
more
marketing.
eyeballs on the women's game. But they've decided that now's a good time to try push the women's game, because there is a growing interest in women's sport, particularly in the States.
Yeah.
That is the professional game, as we know it. Over and above that, if we want to look at kind of the world stage, there are a number of countries around the world that play lacrosse. I think that about 96 in the 90s countries are registered with World Lacrosse, but not all of them compete at
the highest level.
At a highest level, or even in international competition. They might just be affiliated with them and organize their own local things. Lacrosse on the world stage really had its first debut in 1904 at the Olympics, where it was a medaled event at the Olympics.
Really?
A proper Olympic event in 1904 and 1908.
Okay.
So let me pose a question to you. There were 2 events of the Olympics.
Yes.
So 2 years, so 1904, 1908. And a country can participate, of course. There were very few participants in the first 2. How would you believe it is possible that Canada took home 3 medals over that period? It was only played by men. They won 2 golds and a bronze.
Okay, so it must have been just like essentially club teams playing or university teams playing, representing their country in the Olympics.
Yeah, so this was before the Olympics was
an
contested by nations. This was, nations could send teams and players, but they weren't representatives of
the country.
It wasn't a Canadian national team. So basically the side that won the 1904 version was a Canadian club called the Winnipeg Shamrocks.
Okay.
Great name.
Bit of an Irish connection, I imagine.
And the team that won bronze was basically an indigenous Native American side, but they both were affiliated with the Canadian Lacrosse League, so they ended up taking home 2 medals in the same Olympics. Canada got attributed with having 2 medals in the same event in the same year.
There's a similar story to that I really enjoy about the first ever Australian Olympic gold medal was won before Australia was a country.
Really?
It was won by a guy who was representing, almost just running for himself, always representing New South Wales or Victoria, one of the Australian states, it must have been 1896 or maybe 1900, and then Australia was only federalised into a country in the early 1900s.
I see.
So Australia won their first Olympic gold medal before Australia was a country.
That's pretty amazing. I was looking back at some of these old Olympic records, and they have a list of the participants in each of these teams, the guys who actually won the medals. And I have a new favorite lacrosse player, not that I actually had one before.
Mine is still Mr. Beers.
Mr. Beers. This might contest. This might compete. There was a man who participated on the indigenous Native American side. They were representing the Mohawk tribe.
Okay.
His name was Man Afraid of Soap.
Oh, that is a very interesting name.
Sorry, Man Afraid of the Soap.
Man Afraid of the Soap.
I can't find anything more about it.
Okay.
But I would hazard a guess he wasn't one for much of a bath.
Not one for a bath, no.
Okay, so we had two.
You don't want to mark him on the field.
No, not at all. The danger man. It was contested in 1904, 1908 Olympics, and then it reappeared as a demonstration sport in 1928, 1932, and 1948.
Okay.
And most excitingly, it is returning to the Olympics as a medal sport in 2028.
Okay,
so
in LA.
At the LA Games, we will have lacrosse, and they will be playing the sixes version of the game.
Okay, men's and women's, I presume.
Men's and women's.
Okay, very exciting.
There are about, I think the qualification will allow 6 teams, respectively in the men's and the women's, to contest the tournament, and hopefully take a shot at winning some gold medals.
Presumably USA, Canada, and 4 others.
Yes. So very interestingly, the Haudenosaunee nation has been individually recognized as a nation by World Lacrosse.
Okay.
So they actually compete separate from Canada and the USA in all international competition. Yeah. So they would, I mean, if you look through the rankings of men's, women's across box, field, and sixes, normally the top 3 are the Haudenosaunee, the USA and Canada. Australia, as I mentioned, are
pretty good. They're pretty good at everything.
Not to mention that, but they are pretty good. The UK participates. Israel plays. Ireland were just playing in the European Championship semi-finals in the last week or 2. There are continental and other world games contested, but they're not often at a super high level.
Yeah.
So I don't want to go into too much detail about that. But there are about 30 teams ranked in
Sorry.
What was that?
We're on 45 minutes. I was just trying to give you go back to there are about 40 teams.
Yeah, so there are about 30 teams that are represented in the lacrosse world rankings across each of those different formats: men's, women's, box, field, and sixes.
Okay.
So there is a bit of diversity to it. On the African front, I didn't look too much detail, but I saw Uganda plays it.
Okay.
Which I thought was quite cool.
I think Uganda have got a relatively close relationship with the US.
Oh, okay.
I am basing that off the Book of Mormon, though. So I don't think it's that factual.
That pretty much sums up the game at a world level. I think the whole lacrosse world at the moment is really looking forward to their sport being represented on a very international platform in the Olympics. I'm certainly looking forward to watching it there. The sport is not without its challenges, though. It is considered to have some relatively high barriers to entry as far as the cost of playing it in terms of getting all the equipment and whatnot. If you get very entry level equipment, it would cost you between $200 and $400 just to get kitted out to play the sport, which has meant that it hasn't really permeated into the underprivileged communities of the States and Canada.
Is that more on the men's side because of all the protective equipment? Women's, I imagine, is a little bit cheaper.
I would think so, but I think the sticks are still pretty expensive. And that's on the lower end anyway. And there's obviously a cost to travel to go play all these games. Another challenge that they are facing is in relation to the women's professional sport. They really want to try grow that, but it's been super unstable in the 21st century.
Yeah, and you need to have that longevity of professionalism for women to make a decision to do this as a job.
Exactly. Right.
In order to improve as well. So I think it's with any of these, even the sort of pretty established sports in Europe, like rugby, setting up leagues in Americas, the stability is a big issue that you need to be able to play for a couple of years to make it viable.
Yeah. And one other challenge that the sport is facing is particularly focused on the Haudenosaunee Nation. They are actually, the Haudenosaunee Nation is actually able to issue their own passports.
Okay.
So if you are a member of one of the tribes in that nation, you might not have a Canadian or a US passport.
Oh, okay.
You have a Haudenosaunee passport, and there's been a lot of difficulties with them traveling internationally for events, the recognition of that passport. And I think that they didn't have the necessary like security features embedded into the passport that would let people in, because it would maybe be too easy to duplicate. Exactly. So but I think Canada or the States have helped them update their passports lately. So so they will hopefully be able to get to all the tournaments they need to get to.
But they wouldn't participate in the Olympics here.
They are petitioning. They're petitioning it. They are hoping to participate.
To play
in
as sort of an independent team, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's very interesting. Well, best of luck to them.
Yeah, I wonder if they might not even just play under the Olympic banner.
That's almost what I was meaning.
Yeah, as a neutral.
Yeah.
So they are hoping to have a Haudenosaunee team in the men's and the women's for the Olympics.
Well, here's hoping.
Yeah. Is there anything that we touched on that I haven't really covered too much of?
I think I'm just a little bit curious, going back to the basics of gameplay. So I think you mentioned progressing the ball through passing mostly. You can run with the ball. Hey, is there any sort of dribbling that you have to do, like in?
No. So if you're running with the ball just needs to be resting in the net of your stick. People do talk about rocking the ball in the net. I think that's just to offer extra stability. And controlled force into the net to make it that when you're running, the ball doesn't just pop out. So other than that, you can run as far as you want. It's not like you can only run 10 steps and then you have to pass it. So
your threats when carrying are either it just bouncing out because of the rocking of your run, or I guess being smashed by someone.
Exactly right. You. Yeah, because the body checks, you need to watch some videos. The body checks can be enormous in this game, and they're entirely legal, so long as you're hitting them with your shoulders and there's no head contact.
And then secondly, so again, I've watched very limited footage of it, and half of it was in House or Archer, but I would think of it as mostly like an overarm sort of fling, like a little bit like a catapult or a trebuchet, throwing things. Are there other, like, do you throw underarm if under certain circumstances, or slightly sidearm? Yeah,
I would liken it to, think about it like tennis. Or tennis, there you get a smash, you get an overhead smash. Your normal return might be from the side, or you might have to run to drop shot and kind of paddle one from underneath. In that respect, it's not always over the top. That will be how you probably generate your fastest ball. And the ball can go up to about 100 miles an hour when it's thrown. So that would be your fastest throw if you want to take a nice big long shot. But there are, when you're in and around the goals, or you're passing close amongst yourselves, they kind of flick off the side, or even holding at the bottom and kind of flicking it up. That is how the ball is moved around.
So it's very, very sort of context dependent.
Yes.
And then if the ball does fall to the ground, you mentioned that they can't use their hands, so they have to pick it up using
they just scoop it up with using the net.
That would look, I imagine it would look a little bit funny if you drop it very close to you and you have to run away to get enough distance to pick up the ball.
Yeah, but I think also you just hold the stick different.
Hold it closer to the.
Yeah, you just move your hand on shaft and scoop it up. I don't think it's too much of a difficulty now.
Okay, well, that sounds very exciting. I'm looking forward to the Olympics, especially.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you, Wes. I'm definitely leaving better informed about lacrosse.
Fantastic. Until next week. Cheers.
Cheers.